Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for participating in this webinar. My name is Caroline Player, and I am the Director of Alumni Career Services at the Georgia Tech Alumni Association. And I'll give you a little bit of background about me in just a second. But just to start off, we have several of you already on mute, looks like. Thank you so much. If you could keep yourself on mute during the course of the presentation, that would be fantastic. Just helps to avoid any background noise that may be going on. One other thing, as you have questions, feel free. I will open the floor to questions at the end. If you do have questions about anything that I'm addressing, I would certainly appreciate you asking. I'll just read those out and let the audience benefit from the question that you do have, but we'll keep it all anonymous. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, as I said, I am the Director of Alumni Career Services. Each year we host an alumni career fair, so I am pretty familiar with the inner workings of career fairs in general. We do have that annual alumni fair focused on the alumni, the graduates of Georgia Tech, but we do invite graduating students to attend. For many of you during the course of this presentation tonight, we might review ideas that you've certainly heard before, but as with many things, with a few reminders and ideas to focus on, we just hopefully will optimize a situation and make something you're already very good at the best possible at. So think about this presentation in just that way, and let's get started with discussing ways that you can optimize your experience at career fairs during the fall and garner top results. All right. Let's lead off with ideas, things that you can accumulate and you can get ready in advance of career fair. And before we start that, if you could, just so I'll know you know where the chat window is, if you could chat with me and let me know what year you are at Georgia Tech. If you're a master's or PhD student, if you could indicate that as well, and I'll try to make this content as relevant as possible. So just pull down that chat bubble and enter where you are in school. So I'll know if you're going to be looking for a co-op or internship or full-time position. Are you going to be looking for a position with your advanced degree? Go ahead and chat that in. Okay, so I've got a fifth year graduating in December, fifth year PhD student, fall 2016. Okay, we've got a little time there. Fantastic. We've got an ECE grad intern or co-op position. Fantastic. All right, well, thank you all for contributing. So it sounds like right there we already have master's, undergrad, PhD. We've got a freshman online, so thank you for joining us. Master's student looking for full-time position, first year aerospace master's, summer internships. So I'm glad that you all are starting early and just getting familiar with the process. And career fairs are certainly a fantastic way to both spend your time wisely, get to know and talk with a number of different companies, company representatives, and really find out what the best match is for you during the early part of the fall semester. I know there's not only the All Majors Fair, there is a number of profession-specific or major-specific fairs that you can attend. And of course, if you go to career.gatech.edu, so the career services website basically, career.gatech.edu, and look under the events heading on the left-hand side, you'll see career fairs. And all the listed career fairs for both this semester as well as the spring semester will ultimately be listed there. So do definitely take a look. But we'll jump back online as you all prepare your career fair toolkit. There are certainly a few things you can be gathering in advance that will likely make your career fair experience more fruitful. You certainly want to be quite, I call it buttoned up at the career fair, quite well organized, know where your things are, and look very chic and professional to a employer. And here are a few things that you can do to help along with that process. First of all, there are very few things that I think will help you as much as that Padfolio on the left-hand side of the screen here. You can see one I pulled from the Barnes & Noble bookstore, a Georgia Tech Padfolio right there on the left. Here's what that's going to benefit you. By having that, you are going to be able to keep most of your items that you'd have with you that day, cell phone, a pen and paper, copies of your resume, obviously a variety of things there. Oh, I think we might have someone sharing their screen. Let's not do that. Is everyone seeing the PowerPoint screen? Okay, I think we're back online. If you're not seeing the PowerPoint screen now, let me know. Okay, very good. We're all back online. Okay, so a Padfolio is just going to help you really with your organization. As I said, you can store those resumes, pen, paper, business cards you receive. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I personally find the notebook portion so helpful because ultimately, and we're going to talk about this, you're going to create a targeted list, if you will, of companies that you certainly want to stop by, talk to, express interest in. And folks, I know that the career fairs in general are a bit of a hectic sort of way to spend a few hours. I personally think that if you can write down a few notes about the companies especially that you want to stop by and talk to during the course of the fair, maybe a couple of questions you want to make sure you get clarified when you're stopping at those particular booths, use that Padfolio paper to write your notes. Keep everything fresh in your mind. Keep those questions at hand. So when you're about to stop by that particular company booth, you're going to have that information right in front of you. You can refresh yourself and say, let's head on over to Deloitte because I'm going to speak with them next, okay? So that Padfolio, very important. You can get the GT version, as I said, at Barnes & Noble, just happen to notice that, but you can go to any office supply and get some sort of generic way to keep everything together and with you and keep it professional. As you can see next, in the middle there, you have your resume, which is a given, right? We're going to talk about ways to create that very professional resume in just a moment. But one thing that I would especially encourage you along on is using resume bonded paper. That heavier weight, that bonded paper that you can use that generally is labeled linen or resume paper is super important, especially for a career fair. You at your level probably will have a variety, certainly at undergraduate. I think a one-page resume copy is best, and there may be some variations on that as you obviously have more educational background, and we can talk about that individually for sure. But that heavier weight paper in the instance of a career fair is so important because obviously these companies with I don't know how many thousands of people are going to come through the career fair, the majors career fair or major campus fair during the two-day stint. You know, they're going to be receiving hundreds, if not, 1,000 resumes perhaps. I don't know how many they'll generally receive, but if yours can have a maintain its weight, maintain its form, not get all wrinkled up and still look nice after it's been in a pile of resumes. That to me is going to say something about your preparedness, and it's just going to be a nice reflection on you when they look back through the stack and say, who am I going to contact to talk with later? Just pull your resume out for reference later. Just keep that looking nice, and that heavier bond paper is going to help with that. Of course, your nice looking outfit, we're going to talk about that as we move forward and what exactly you should be wearing to career fair. For your All Majors Fair that will be coming up here in September, I want to encourage you on two things. This is specific, the bottom right corner is going to be specific to the All Majors career fair that happens over 2 days. You will have to have your buzz card to check in, and they will put the booth layout, the information on the companies, and details about the hiring needs of those companies in an app called Career Fair Plus, which you all will probably be, you may be familiar with, and you will soon be familiar with. So you're going to want to access that. So bring your smartphone with you to the fair, not to reference during any conversations, of course, but as you sort of plan your route around the fair on the day of, and you know, refresh yourself on any details of what the companies may be looking for. Do bring your smartphone and, of course, your copies of your resume and the buzz card with you on the day of. So there's your career fair toolkit for you to prepare in advance. All right. Your resume is essentially your ticket, right? Here is a very nicely formatted sample from our very own Scheller College. So I have to attribute this nice format to them. Folks, there's no absolute right or wrong on a resume format. I do think you want to use a format that allows you to play up your strengths, whether that be in volunteerism and community service, in certainly work experience, how you feel that your skills, experiences, and involvement is best portrayed. You want to use a format that helps along with that. Now, one of the questions I typically get, especially from students who are considering how to format their resume, especially for a career fair, is the question of whether you use an objective or not. And here's my opinion. When you're asking yourself, do you need this for a career fair? And typically I will certainly encourage people who are using an objective to make it very direct towards the position and or company type of position that they're ultimately pursuing. But that's kind of hard, right? When you may be going to a career fair to explore multiple different sorts of positions. So I have certainly seen people not use an objective for the purposes of the career fair, and that's a possibility. You can certainly begin with with the education section. You can also use an objective that focuses on skills, what you bring to the table, and generally references a full-time position or a co-op position in the area of industrial engineering, for example. So that's another possibility. One thing that I've certainly seen our alums do, and this is something that you can consider, though I wouldn't wouldn't encourage you to have too many different sorts of resumes with you on the day of the fair. Some people will bring multiple copies of their resume, multiple versions, if you will, of that resume. So that may be a possibility as you, if you have two specific areas that you say, I definitely want to pursue management consulting, but I also want to keep myself open to finance, and you can use an objective that corresponds to each of those areas, and you can trust yourself to hand that version of the resume off to the right companies. That may be another option for you. So there's some flexibility there for sure. I do think if it were meant Testing, 1, 2, 3. I think I might be back online. If you all will confirm with me, that would be fantastic. I tried my favorite IT issue, which is unplugging the mic and plugging it back in, and seems to have worked. Thank you all for your feedback. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so just to review, if you are applying for a different position, applying for a scholarship perhaps, a leadership role, or a spot in a organization that does require that you submit a resume, it certainly would be to your benefit to update that objective to indicate as such. Sometimes the tendency is, oh, if you just want an objective, let me use the same one that I've used the last time I tried to apply for a co-op position, and not to modify it to that specific instance. So if it is a scholarship, indicate that in the objective and make it specific as possible to the situation in which you're using it. I want to let you all know that there are multiple opportunities to have your resume reviewed through C2D2, the campus for the Center for Career Discovery and Development. That's right on campus. They are also having multiple in-person workshops, so that may give you the chance to have your resume personally reviewed, and that can be very helpful in just making sure you're communicating exactly what you want to on your resume so that it can be most appealing to the employers that you want to interact with. So keep that in mind as you are approaching the career fairs coming up in the next couple weeks. All right. So in the situation of the career fair, obviously you're going to want to say a lot on your resume as quickly as possible. And let's talk about that, because it is sort of a 10 or 15 second scan of your resume. You may be handing over a one-page document to a hiring representative, and you want to have the keywords that are associated with your area of study, with your industry of interest, right there and very visible on the resume. And this can be incorporated into your work experience section. It can be a separate skills section on your resume. There are multiple ways of doing this, and certainly, as I said before, the resume is yours. You work and format it the way you see fit and the way it best serves you. This obviously is more of a CS, a computer programmer type of keyword set here, but use what you feel like best defines your major area of study and your industry, and that's going to easily allow employers to scan through and see if your resume fits what they want in their hiring areas. All right, super important here regarding the resume, and we're going to move through resume in just a second, but another fantastic way to illustrate successes, folks, is through highlighting the accomplishments that you've had. This can be work-related, so many of you may have already had a co-op or internship or part-time work experience, and that's fantastic. Summer job, and you can use those to highlight accomplishments. That may be in varying degree depending on the work experiences you've already had, whether or not it relates to your professional intentions after graduation or your pursuit of co-op or internship. You know, if you've had a summer job and you are, for example, a freshman with no work experience, it may be to your advantage to get involved with student organizations. You may have had done some things with student organizations already in your tenure at Georgia Tech, or will do that, and you can add those to the resume for sure. Even as a freshman, if you're looking for some work experience towards the end of this year, I do not think that it would be out of bounds to even use some work or school involvement that you've had even in high school. Now, I would not go past your freshman year with that type of information on, but sometimes if you are transitioning and you're very early on in your freshman year, you're just not going to have had the chance or the opportunity. So thank you for that question, to accumulate the type of experiences that you'd put on a resume ultimately. So I think in that situation that you would not want to depend on that for long in your college experience, you can certainly rely on some of that involvement that you've had in the past before college. So that work-related information, student organizations things, what have you done to improve things, enhance, lead, save or make money for an organization, grow a membership base, a client base. Maybe you've increased sales as a retail salesperson, even out on a retail floor. That can be a great opportunity to show, hey, I do, whether or not it's ultimately related to my professional area of interest, I do a good job. If you've streamlined a process, made something you feel like more effective, and you can illustrate that on your resume, help someone save time, all of those things. Think about that when you're crafting the statements that describe the involvement you've had and the work experience you've had. The sort of concise statements that begin with action verbs show you take action and will immediately assist a reader in knowing that you bring value. And it's really important that statements be concise but meaningful, especially in the sense of the career fair, right? Here are a few examples that I pulled together for you just so you'd have an idea of some possibilities. And these are going to be more work related, but like I said, you can certainly use instances from your volunteerism and your leadership and student organizational experience. How about reduced logistical expenditures by 15%, resulting in cost savings of $900,000? Streamlined a meeting process, resulting in time savings of 22%. Developed and implemented a company's first ever policies and procedures manual governing meetings and events, and negotiated a 5-year contract with price reductions, concessions, volume discounts, and new services, resulting in an annual added value of $1 million. Folks, those monetary figures may be outside of the bounds of maybe something that you'd even be doing in college, but I promise you, even for people that I've worked with in leadership roles that might be in a larger student organization, certainly some of the monetary amounts that I've come across, I've been very impressed with. So I know that some of you have certainly been involved in budgeting. I know that a key to your success may be, you know, streamlining processes. In many cases, the percentages are often the great equalizer. Lots of times I tell folks that I work with alumni that have already graduated, when you're thinking about working at Bob's Corner Store, the revenue amounts and the sales amounts that you might be pulling in certainly might not it all translate to what Walmart does on an annual basis. But if you say, I increase sales by 30%, that's going to make a difference. And people can imagine how that difference could impact a store like Walmart if you've done X at a smaller organization. So just keep that in mind. Someone asked regarding religion and whether or not you put that in volunteer work, and that's a great question. You know what, I think that without going into a great deal of detail, generally religious and political affiliation is not encouraged on the face of a resume. However, if you have you can describe the service work, the volunteerism work that you've done, that may be a possibility without actually disclosing the religious affiliation itself. So I would welcome you to ask that question, to send me an email, and we can figure out how to do that. And I'll give you my email address at the end. Okay. So focus on highlighting accomplishments, folks. That will be very important as you make that initial impression with your resume on folks at the Alumni Career Fair with those hiring representatives. Right along those lines, illustrate involvement and leadership. Very important that companies can depend on you to work in teams and lead when needed. So you want to illustrate both of those, really. I'm a teamwork person, and I am also a person who can step up and motivate others to get work done. And also that volunteerism that sort of you can tell in the bottom picture illustrated here, people want to know that you are committed to going the extra mile, that you are multidimensional. You're both good at what you do at work, but you also can get involved in your community, your organization, and make the world a better place. And many companies now are seeking out individuals who, you know, have proven that background of willingness to make an impact in things other than just sheerly, I'm competent in the workplace or in the work that you're asking me to do. One quick question here about the elevator speech. Let me illustrate that we are going to go through that in just a moment, so thank you for that. And if you have any questions we don't review about the elevator speech, you just let me know, but we will get to that for sure. So, as college students, many times you'll have a chance to contribute to service, social, or honor organizations in a way that allows you to showcase responsibility level. Certainly, number one, get involved with those organizations while you have those chances at Georgia Tech, and then describe them in a way on your resume that will be impressive to the employers that are ultimately going to be reading through the resume. So here's an example. If you are involved in Alpha Kappa Psi, for example, you're vice president of membership, you could actually say member AK Psi, and that'd be one way to address this on the resume, right? Second thing, vice president of membership of Alpha Kappa Psi. Fantastic. So then you've mentioned your leadership roles. That's very good. But if you can say, as Vice President of Membership of AK Psi, I led successful membership campaign, increasing prospective member applications by 30% over previous years. I led training and orientation for 40 new members after updating the training manual from previous years. You can see how, wow, that makes an impression on people. You've not just said VP of membership and assumed people know exactly what that entails, or assume that you've communicated the appropriate amount of oversight and the appropriate amount of responsibility. They can really start to understand what you've done in that leadership role if you just give them 2 sentences of detail. And here's what it helps to do, folks. When you provide a level of detail on your resume, it allows people enough meat on that resume to start asking you questions about your experience. And then with those questions, they get to know you a little bit better. So whether it's about the involvement, leadership, or work experience, the level of detail you provide someone who has never interacted with you personally or professionally in advance, the resume gives those talking points, and if you provide the right level of interest and detail, people will be able to ask you questions that will enable the conversation to keep on going, and that's the best chance for you to make progress and inroads into that organization you ultimately want to be employed by. So let's move along. We've gone through resumes. You're ticket in to having discussions with the employers. Let's talk about dressing the part. Here are a few of my ideas on that subject. And you can see some illustrations here of some appropriate attire. Number one, don't just stop by any career fair in a t-shirt, shorts, pair of jeans, etc. And I've seen it happen, folks. And I'm sure that none of you on this call would, or on this webinar, would consider doing that. But please don't try to squeeze in a trip to the career fair just to explore in casual, overly casual attire. It may be that you get a wonderful chance to have a good discussion with one of the employers that you're super interested in, and you don't want that first impression to be that person did not think more of this experience than to wear something that they just wear to the CRC or to class. So don't squeeze a trip to the career fair in between classes that you're going to ultimately dress casually. Wear a suit to that class and then go by the career fair, okay? So you'll notice on the left-hand side, I've got a big old gold and white tie on a male suit. Folks, here's my ideas on. I do see a number of alums and students wear the Georgia Tech colors at these professional events, and I'm going to tell you what I think about that. If you can be enthusiastic enough to wear your school colors to a career fair or professional event, somewhere you're representing both yourself ultimately, but also the school, you're showing that employer what sort of employee you'd be. If you can be that level of excitement or show that level of excitement about Georgia Tech to a prospective employer, they think, and I would think to myself, if I were the employer representative or hiring manager from that organization, I think, you know what? This person could certainly demonstrate that level of enthusiasm and have that level of participation and excitement over our company. And so I would just encourage you to give that some thought. I definitely don't think it's a must-do, but it may be something just to make your appearance extra special and perhaps stand out a little bit more that you do that. So just review as far as what is appropriate for both our women on the call and men on the call. Women, pants or skirt suit, pantsuit or skirt suit with a conservative blouse or shell. That may give you the chance to show your gold. Women, minimal jewelry in the case of the career fair. I've just seen jewelry be a bit distracting, and I don't want you to do that both for yourself and for the person you're interacting with. So keep that in mind. I certainly think a dress with a suit jacket is okay if they complement one another. Men, usually super easy, suit with a tie. You could have a matching jacket or slacks combination and also be fine, but I would go with that tie as just the extra formality. Here's the deal. You are looking for a job with an organization. You want to convey to that organization both a certain level of respect, and you want them to know that at the highest level, you can be dressed up and looking nice for any event, any customer, any higher leadership grouping that they can put you in front of, right? So keep that in mind when you're dressing for the career fair and making that first impression. You do not have to go out and spend a ton of money on this, though, folks. There are plenty of resources available out there for you. Of course, department store, closest one to campus, Dillard's, but you don't feel like you need to go buy a new suit from a department store that's close by. There are plenty of consignment stores, Goodwill, that you can actually, I was just in the Goodwill on Northside a few weeks ago, and plenty of nice looking professional pieces there in case you wanted to go spend minimal money and look very nice. Consignment shops, certainly a good possibility. Campus Closet, for those of you who have not heard of that, it is a resource on campus where many alums and other professionals have donated suits that they no longer use. This is a fantastic chance at a low cost. It's essentially you just check out that suit for free, use that for your interviews or for a career fair in this chance, then you just have to return it with having had it dry cleaned. So as long as a suit is pressed or your attire is pressed, your outfit fits properly, consider a wide range of options where you can spend very little, and certainly the department stores are always an option, but certainly the Campus Closet, consignment stores, Goodwill, and other resources where you can go fairly minimal on expense, you can get a very, very nice possibilities there as well. Quick question about nail polish. You know, ultimately, I'll tell you all this. When I was in undergrad, I was a finance and an accounting major. And at that time, it was very conservative. You wouldn't really entertain wearing anything but navy blue, black, or gray, and then a very conservative cream top. Really, that's the extent of it. So that would be what I would be used to. So I would say that I would not go way outlandish with any nail polish color that you might that might be distracting ultimately for you. And I am not saying that you all have to go to that conservative length with your attire that I mentioned. I think there are certainly some very nice and colorful options here that you certainly could go with. The nail polish, I don't think it's a big deal as long as it's not distracting. So I know that some things are so bright that they sort of distract from the attention of you as a candidate, and I just wouldn't go that far. I would keep it minimal and conservative for the purposes of the fair. All right, let's move along. So you've got your resume, you've got your career fair toolkit, you've got sort of an idea of where you can go or what you're already going to wear. Here's the deal, folks. I think ultimately very important that you as job seekers have a targeted list of employers that you want to go after. The lucky thing for you in the case of the All Majors career fair coming up shortly, and probably for many of the individual campus fairs that are going to be happening during the course of the fall and spring, you're going to be able to access a list of the career fair, the employer participants of the career fair. For the All Majors Fair specifically, I would invite you to go to career.gatech.edu, the main career services website. Go to the career fair information for students and see who is attending the fair in advance. So you do certainly not want to wait until the day of and then sort of plan your route. In advance, you're only going to have a certain amount of time. Typically, if not in every case, there is a different set of employers recruiting on day 1 and day 2. So you are going to have to plan out both days and see who you want to stop by and talk to. You're going to want to check out the list, and that is an image of the career fair information available on the career services website there on the right-hand side of your screen. So see who's hiring within your major, who is sponsoring visas. If that is a need that you have, go ahead and check those lists out. Now, people will ask me, hey, say that management, your major's management, or you're pursuing an MBA or an electrical and computer engineering master's degree, and you see a company that you're ultimately very interested in listed in the career fair list, but they happen not, for whatever reason, to mention that they're hiring for your major. Can you approach those companies? Absolutely. You want to approach them, though, with the knowledge and perhaps even mentioning that one of your dream companies is Coca-Cola, or your dream company is Coca-Cola. Perhaps that'd be better phrased that way, and if you're interacting with that company specifically at the time. But they don't list computer engineering. You notice that, but you just wanted to stop by and let them know about your interest and give them your elevator speech, and that would be fine. I think acknowledging that you may be outside of what they've listed, letting them know that you've done your homework and you know that they're going to be there and what they're looking for is important, but still making that connection is very important too. So I would certainly not restrict yourself to only companies that list your major. If there are those in your sort of dream or target list that don't specifically list you, consider that and you know, make that chance to, or take the chance to stop by and speak with them too. So you've got the list of companies. Ultimately, visit those company websites, determine, determine, as we said, the hiring needs. Use websites like Vault, Wetfeet. You can conduct further research about employer descriptions, ways that previous employees may feel about working at those companies. You can access a lot of that information online. Here's one thing that I'd say to you. I would say make your own decisions. You'll see things about different companies online, and to be honest with you, some are ravingly positive, and there's a variation, and everybody's not going to like every place that they work, and that may be a individual boss to supervisor thing. That may be the place in which they worked and the culture of that one individual facility. So while I encourage you to collect information about the employers that you may be interacting with and get those opinions and research your employers certainly thoroughly to find the right fit for you, I would say make your own decisions and have those conversations in person so you can determine that for yourself. So on the day of the career fair, here's the booth layout for the All Majors Fair. This is my understanding of what the All Majors Fair will look at, but I certainly want you to identify and look up the finalized copy of that booth map. You want to have a plan, right? You certainly do not want to go to and fro all day long, wasting your time in the super long lines that are going to exist for some of the companies. You have to be strategic, right? You have to take advantage of the time that you are able to spend at the career fair and not spending time wandering from one corner of the fair to the other is probably a way to save at least some of that valuable time. You'll have your targeted list. You see that over just a sample possibility of a target list that an individual might have as they pursue positions, not those that are specific at the alumni or at the campus fairs necessarily, but you'll have your list of companies that you certainly want to stop by and talk with. Plan strategically. Here's another thing, a word of advice I would certainly give you. You are going to probably have your favorite companies at the fairs that you're going to during the course of this fall, future semesters, etc. Do not go to your most favorite company the very first booth that you stop by at. I would encourage you to warm up with a few companies that you are indeed interested in, but maybe not the be-all, end-all companies that are your absolute top of the target list, okay? I just think that a career fair can be a very hectic process. There's a lot going on around you. You're not exactly sure how you're going to deliver that elevator speech and how you're going to be, what you're going to be most comfortable with. So try it out a few times first before you go to the absolute favorite company you have there. Utilize your Career Fair Plus app, that app that I mentioned at the beginning. You'll get directions on accessing that. So you'll know exactly where the companies are going to be, and there's some pretty neat functions there that allow you to, highlight companies you're interested in and check off companies you've been to, that sort of thing. So you'll have some tools certainly to help you when you're going through and making that plan of who to visit when. And if I'm not mistaken, you might even get that Career Fair app access in advance of the fair, so that will be helpful in certainly creating the plan a little bit farther in advance so you'll know where you're going and when. All right. So the basics. We've talked about researching the companies that you're attending. Check. We've gotten the dress smart. You all know both kind of what to look for when you're planning your outfits and where to access them, where you can go about getting some of the professional attire if you don't have that prepared already, and that's perfectly all right. Talked about preparing a strong resume, highlighting your accomplishments and skills. We're going to talk about the introductory statement and that elevator speech that was mentioned earlier. We will go through that. I want you to have rehearsed that in advance. You want to convey the skills, the interest that you have to these prospective employers, both obviously in a resume, but verbally as well. And there's a few things that I want you to keep in mind about the introductory statement that I think will take the pressure off a little bit. And we'll go through that in just a couple minutes. prepare questions in advance. As I said, when you are talking about these companies on your target list, these companies that you're very interested in working in long term, or for your internship or co-op experience, write some notes down. Prepare questions that you have, both for the, just illustrating your interest in the company, your enthusiasm about them, but obviously to get your questions answered, right? You want to know these things that are going to allow you to make a decision. So if you're offered multiple opportunities for your internship or full-time, which I bet that'll happen for you, you want to be able to distinguish between those and say, okay, you know what, I really did learn a lot about the company culture. This seems to fit with me, and I think I'd really enjoy this company. And that may just, the chance to get those questions answered in an in-person conversation can certainly be helpful to you in the long term when you're making decisions. Folks, nonverbal and verbal communications, cannot emphasize the importance of that as you approach these employers, that eye contact, showing that you're assured, extending your hand for a firm handshake, smiling and being enthusiastic, and we'll talk a little bit more about enthusiasm in just a second, but showing that enthusiasm for the position and the company, very important. As we said, the commercial about your strengths and transferable experiences, very important. Keeping things relevant, so you don't necessarily, notice I said transferable experience is important. As much as you can relate things that are going to be relevant for the employers that you're interacting with, do that. You don't want to ramble on, say too much. You're not going to have the chance to do that. You want to be descriptive but concise, and you want to maintain that eye contact. That's both important as you're conveying that sense of confidence, but also to just let them know that you're very interested in what they have to say. Eye contact can be so important. Certainly treat everyone equally respectfully, even if something occurs during your conversation and it turns out ultimately that company's not going to be as big of much of a fit as you think that you thought that it might have been. You might have misunderstood how they represented themselves, or perhaps they weren't even clear about that. And that happens, and it's going to. But certainly continue with a polite conversation. If you want to still treat them with respect, and ultimately in that just like you would with a company that you're still very interested in. And then you have the chance, the flexibility later to make both make decisions about, do you want to pursue them more or not pursue them more? But keep everything ultimately very respectful for companies of all sorts. And let me see, I think we have a little question here. Yes, very important note here. So folks, and this is true at alumni career fairs, campus career fairs, you might have, as far as the audience that you're interacting with, and we'll talk about this, you may have a fairly recent grad that is acting as a recruiter for an organization that may have both very little professional experience and have no technical experience, except for perhaps interacting with you all as technical candidates. If you are from a technical or engineering background, the person you're interacting with may not have a similar background. You may be interacting with executive level individuals. You may be interacting with technical professionals that work for the organization that come out to hiring events. So there's going to be a variety of different potential audiences for you to be interacting with. And it may not be appropriate ultimately for you to ask a very technically oriented question to a recruiter professional that doesn't have the technical background you do, right? So you want to be very sensitive to that, because that could make conversation go very awkward very quickly if you've asked something that they have absolutely no, like a new product spec on something that they've just recently released. In a new smartphone, that may not be their proficiency. Their proficiency might be human resources and recruiting, and you want to be sensitive to that. In that case, questions about the recruiting process. How long have you recruited on campus? Or, those sorts of questions may be appropriate if you need them for an individual who is more in the recruiting area. A technical professional would obviously be more inclined towards those more specific technical questions. And then executives, obviously that's going to span a different sort of question too. So be sensitive to that, who you're interacting with, and select your conversation or your questions accordingly. Okay, so question here, when you walk up and start your commercial, do you start with the basics, name, major, when you're graduating, then do you go on and tell them what you're looking for, or first tell them about your experience? Ultimately, I do think that your commercial and the way that you go about conveying all of those ideas is up to you. So I don't think there's a very specific formula. Let's take a look at the next slide. It's going to be an absolute. If you hold on 2 seconds, let me go through these 2 slides, and then we're going to get to a formula that you can use for your commercial, though. Hold on just a second on that commercial, and we will certainly get to that. So, folks, I just realized that WebEx doesn't allow me to do animation, so you see all my folks at once. But if you could chat to me, over on the left-hand side, you see a woman in a white blouse sort of being rather attentive to a gentleman across from her. What is an emotion that you think of when you see that, that woman on the left-hand side of your screen? If you could just use the chat function, and a few people throw out an idea of an emotion that you see or something that you feel like that image conveys. Happy? Yes? Engaged. Very good. I think attentive too. Oh, Tim. Thank you. Interested. Very good. I do as well. You see that person, that woman being very interested in probably what this person has to say. Confident. You're right. She is holding herself in such a way, sitting up straight, hands in front, but relaxed. She seems very confident. Thank you for that. Let's move on. So a lot of positives from that image, right? When you're sitting across from that woman, you would think she is very interested. She's put together. She's interested in what I'm saying. How about the gentleman up in the top, right under the word emotion? So the gentleman that you can tell is in a suit. What would you say about what he's thinking or feeling right now? Pensive? Yes. Bored? Yes. Daydreaming, interviewed a lot today. Yes, I think that sort of has been through that process multiple times today, maybe a little worn out, daydreaming. Absolutely. So here's what I think about that gentleman's face. Could be a variety of things, nothing too terribly negative, right? Maybe bored. Maybe he's thinking, but it's hard to tell, right? It's kind of hard to read that gentleman because depending on the person, you can ultimately think, hey, that person's not interested in what I'm saying, or he's either thinking about what I'm saying fairly, intently. So there could be a variety of interpretations of his facial expression and his body language. What do you all think about that gentleman on the right? The rightmost image on that screen. I would say completely disinterested and annoyed. You all are right. So that's a perhaps over the top image that I selected that's completely negative. And then if you look at the woman on the bottom, you sort of see if you want to throw out any ideas on what you see when you think of her. I think over the top enthusiastic. Perhaps a bit of a cheerleader down there, also dressed professionally and nice, but certainly overly excited, right? So I just encourage you all, when you're thinking about interacting with individuals at a career fair, you want to be aware of what your facial expressions and what your body language can give off without you even intending. Like, hey, I thought I was in deep thought, but actually this person interpreted me as being boring, or bored. So you want to be tempered with what the expressions and the body language that you're using. But ultimately, folks, you do want to be enthusiastic. You want to communicate a general sense of enthusiasm without being like the bottom woman that was completely over the top. If you feel like you have trouble communicating that you are indeed very interested through facial expressions or through verbal expressions, through body language, then use verbal expressions to state that you are interested in a company. There is very few things in life now that goes as far other than just baseline competency for what you'd be able to do in that job is enthusiasm. And people want to know that you're enthusiastic about the opportunity to work at that company and about the work that you'd be doing in a specific position. Ultimately, you want to be clear with them on your goals and optimistic when interacting with them. And one way that you can certainly do that later is to follow up about conversations that you had at the career fair. Enthusiasm and excitement over opportunities can certainly be conveyed through a follow-up after the fair. Now, here's the value of your introductory statement. I know we're running a little short on time here, but you do want to give a person you're interacting with at the the campus career fair the chance to know more about your background, know more about what you do well and what you bring to the table. You want to inform them about what you're interested in doing too. So certainly keeping that introductory statement packed with things that you have done and things that you are interested in doing and how those sort of, making those relate to one another is certainly important. I do want to say here that along these lines, you do want to be clear and be relevant. Your elevator pitch essentials are certainly, as the question was mentioned earlier, what major you have, what degree you're achieving at Georgia Tech, when you're completing your degree. You want them to know when you're available, the types of positions and perhaps the industry or field that you want to go into. And again, this can be modified according to the company that you're going to talk with, right? So you want it to be relevant to that company. While at Tech, you might want to mention some of the volunteer or extracurricular experiences that have allowed you to gain some specialized skills. If you're pursuing a full-time position, certainly, especially where co-op and internship are relevant, mentioning those things where you gain skills that would be appropriate for the position. And then you wanted to come by and speak because and then mentioning why you dropped by to that company. You notice that they're hiring within your area. You're interested in the work that they're doing in X, Y, and Z. And making it clear both what you bring to the table and then why you've specifically chosen to speak with them. So here's an example of an elevator pitch. And again, I do not think that it has to follow one specific formula. Certainly, I did some research just to come up with some phrasing for this, and you can use what you feel presents you best. I do think that probably ending up with why you chose to come by that particular company booth would be helpful. But I do want you to take cues from the person that you're interacting with. When you say an elevator pitch, I don't want you all to necessarily think, you know what, in one breath, I've got to go from hello to the reason why I came by this particular booth. There may be a more natural conversation that drums up with a particular person at a booth that makes you don't have to necessarily think to say this all at once in one blurt, okay? So don't feel forced to get this all out at one time. They may interject some questions that allows conversation to go a little bit more easily, but do have in mind what you want to communicate with them before you leave that booth, okay? So the elevator pitch is a combination of when you'd be available, what you've been pursuing, some unique qualifiers and skills and experiences that you've already been able to obtain. But I want you to deliver that in a way that's both sensitive to the person you're interacting with and presents you in the best way possible, okay? All right. Just a few things that we've already recapped but I do want to mention fuel up for the day, have some good energy behind you. Arrive early so you can get sort of your nerves under control. You can see a general layout. I know that that depends on your class schedule and things of that nature, but have that plan in mind so you can be sure to get to your priority list and your first tier employers, but perhaps warm up to those first tier. Ask for a business card from company representatives, especially those that you're ultimately interested in following up with. You may find that some have them with them, some have already distributed all of them, but it really does give you a great chance to follow up with individuals after the fair. In terms of following up, use those business cards to write a note or an email that thanks them for their time, reiterates those skills, and reminds them of what you're interested in doing. Maybe something came up specifically in conversation that you want to reiterate, and you can certainly do that in a follow-up email or note. Many of these companies will ask you to apply online. Do not be discouraged by that. Simply follow the directions on applying or joining CareerBuzz to go to the next steps. Maybe it's on-campus recruiting. Look for opportunities, whether it be through student organizations, these info sessions. I know we just had one for KPMG over at the Alumni House just recently, and I want you to interact with those companies consistently so you can be in the minds of those hiring professionals. So keep in mind and keep an eye out for chances to interact with them later following the fair, because the fair is awfully busy, whether it be the Majors Fair, the Institute of Industrial Engineers Fair. It's a busy day for these hiring representatives, and you may not want to only depend on that to secure your future with that particular company. Just want to follow up with one final thing. Folks, in our age of emails, and I'm sure you're just as overrun with them as I am, and a reason for getting that business card, a thank you note can go a long way in distinguishing you as a different sort of candidate. I know that you have to be, when people are deciding on whether to interview you or interview you a second time, time is of the essence, and I get getting a note to these hiring professionals oftentimes as quickly as you can, and a nice email is a great way to do that. But I would also say a thank you note, a paper written note can be super effective. You might be the only paper note, or yours might be the only paper note that they receive, and you can see here some examples. You're going to want to, you could perhaps use a Georgia Tech specific thank you note, one with your initials or name. Just a plain white card would be perfectly sufficient. Writing on, you can see there, if you have a folded card, writing on the appropriate spot within that card, so important. And then addressing it using a stamped envelope, using your return address and the professional address listed on the business card, just can be a really nice way to distinguish yourself as a very thoughtful candidate if you have the time and allowance, but you do want it to be professional, readable, and you do want to use the right and appropriate materials. Writing in a legible way using black or blue ink is generally appropriate. So I just wanted to use that as maybe an extra secret way to distinguish yourself and following up with these employers. If you do have any questions, I am glad to respond to you out loud. If you'll use the chat function, I appreciate you all so much spending your time with me this evening. If you have anything that may take a little time to cover, certainly send me an email, and I would be more than happy to respond. But do keep in mind the C2D2 office that has the chance for walk-in appointments for resume review also has a number of workshops. Check their website for career.gatech.edu for workshops that may fit both graduate student populations as well as undergraduates. So there's a variety of topics there. Oh, I was reminded to remind you all, especially for the All Majors Fair, there may be a line. So to get into the fair, there are thousands of students coming in. Everyone is checked in through a scanning process, so do keep that in mind, that there may be a line. Don't let that deter you. There's probably going to be a line, so persevere. Keep your spirits up. Know everyone's experiencing that sort of hold up too, but do be prepared for that in terms of the time you're budgeting. All right. Many companies already have applications up, and so companies will be at the career fair I've already applied for. Should you mention that? Absolutely. Absolutely, you should mention that you've already used CareerBuzz to apply for openings. That will be a sign to them both that you have gone the extra mile. You're not just stopping by their booth for someone to talk to. You have a real and proven interest in their organization. Let them know what you've applied for. Absolutely. Good question. Let me see. Oh, thank you letters should be given to company professional after we end our conversation, or do we mail them? Excellent question. So as an afterthought, after the career fair, the email or mailed thank you note would be just a follow-up after the career fair. So not something you'd hand them immediately, but something that you'd follow up with after the event. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for participating. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all so much. I don't see anyone else, but you have my email address. And if there's anything that comes up after the fact, feel free to reach out. You all have a nice evening. Best wishes to you through the recruitment processes you'll be going through. Have a wonderful fall and spring, and I look forward to hopefully interacting with you personally later on. Good night.